So I wanted to explain why it bugs me a lot, and I love the Duran. I really like you guys. I love Gonzalo, but it really bugs me when there's this dismissive talk of and no disrespect, and I can understand where it's coming from, but I as a former I was in the U.S. Marine Corps for 4 years. Never saw combat, but I did deploy to a foreign base or a base in another country. But it really bugs me when I hear dismissive talks of, well, why are the troops in Azovstal? Why are the troops in Mariupol, Kharkiv? Why do they keep fighting? And specifically, recently about Azovstal Steelworks. And I'm going to ignore the possibility and or fact and or percentage of how many of them are followers of a particularly, as Alexander would say, reprehensible. I don't know if that sounded insulting. I have a bad British accent, but a certain reprehensible worldview. Setting that aside, I think there is much merit, and I think there's reason to commend troops who continue fighting after they logically should stop. Part of this is bias. One of the things they really, really drill into you in boot camp is we're going to tell you constant story after story after story of Bello Wood, Chesty Puller, Dan Daly, troops that they shouldn't have kept fighting. Logically, they didn't stand a chance, but they sat there and they gritted their teeth and they fought and they fought and they got messed up, but they kept going and fighting and going like full honey badger mode. And so I am a little biased from that. But if every time in history there was a conflict, there was a war, and one side made the logical decision to stop fighting, many wars would have turned out differently than how they actually have in history. Now, I think right now, once again, setting aside the whole NAZI question or issue, all things the same, those troops should keep fighting. I think they should. I think the Ukrainian leadership of the nation should understand their situation and say, okay, what do we need to give up? You want Eastern Ukraine? Take it. Whatever you want. The West isn't going to come to our aid, so we'll make a deal with Russia. I don't think they want to do that, and I think partially the what seems like the static nature of the Ukrainian military, maybe this isn't the case. I'm sure it's more complex than how I'm putting it, but it seems to me like there's been a lot of effort to just keep as many troops in Eastern Ukraine as possible. And don't move them. We're not going to pull back to a better defensive line. We're just going to fight and fight and fight and fight. And I think there's an argument to be made for that, because I think as soon as there's no Ukrainian troops there, as soon as Russia can basically consolidate their power, continue raising Russian flags over government buildings, and putting out is it RMB? It's RMB, right? The Russian ruble, and shifting things to work within the Russian economy and state. It increases the likelihood that that's not going to come back to Ukraine. Now, I don't think it is anyway. But if you're hoping to grind your enemy down to bring them to the negotiating table, then you want to make sure that, like, okay, when we come to the table and we're talking about Donbass or Mariupol, Eastern Ukraine in general, then, and Russia can say, well, look, we've already consolidated. It's basically already a part of Russia, so that's more in our favor. If fighting is still going on, then I think there would be a bit more wiggle room. On top of that, I think they want to grind Russia down to the point where Russia wants to come to the negotiating table, or come back again after all of the BS. But I think they underestimate how good Russians are at grinding warfare, because they've been doing that for decades, many decades. And especially these cauldrons that everyone talks about constantly. So I guess in summary, I feel like I'm rambling a bit, but in summary, I would say if I was those troops and I was not given the order to surrender, I don't want to claim something that I don't want to try to claim some type of bragging thing like I would fight to the end. I would like to think I would, but I think they should continue to fight. As if they're doing their duty to their nation, they should continue to fight. I think the Ukrainian leadership should understand that, one, I don't think the West is going to come to their aid, not in a way that will actually allow them to defeat Russia. I hope the West doesn't come to their aid in that way, because I think that would require multiple nations' troops on the ground, or aircraft in the air. But I would hope that the Ukrainian leadership just says, look, okay, this is over. We keep trying to play this game. We keep trying to, I think it was Alexander mentioned that they would rather go to parties in Brussels than parties in Moscow. The parties in Brussels don't want you. They don't like you. You are a useful puppet, and your people are suffering for it. Understand, Russia may not be your friend. I don't know why I'm now directing this to Vladimir Zelensky, nosies. But the Russians may not be Ukraine's friend. The West certainly is not. You're a means to an end. You're being manipulated, and your people are suffering for it. Now, personally, I'm not too sad about hearing that some NAZIs die. It's not that I want them to. I think, you can believe whatever you want as long as you don't commit crimes, then that's fine. Many of them, I'm sure, have, but I'm not too sad about that. But in general, Ukraine is only going to suffer more and more and more, and it's slowly enough, in my opinion, partially because of the Russian strategy, although I don't know if that's what Russia is trying to have as the effect. It's going to go slowly enough to where at any given moment, Ukrainian leadership can tell themselves, any day now, any day, we just need to hang on a little bit more. And the entire time, Ukraine will suffer and get more damage. And what really, really grinds my gears, more than the dismissive talk about surrender, is that people in the West are going to have to pay more for groceries. Poor people are going to get poorer. Rich people are probably going to get richer. And a lot of people in the third world are going to starve. So what bugs me, and this is part of why I'm mostly concerned that the West really will want to put boots on the ground, because these people are sociopaths. And I think part of it is the madness of crowds. And I think it's interesting to me, the more I've thought about it, the more I don't think the deep state exists per se. There is definitely a deep state. I think it's collective social enforcement, in that each one of these world leaders wants to be liked by the rest of the group. They all want to go to the parties in Brussels, and Zelensky wants the same, apparently. But, well, they're dumb, and I think the stupidity of their, I'd say it's similar to just about every war throughout history. They're going to lose, but in the process of their stupidity being brought to light, a lot of people are going to die. A lot more people than Ukrainians. Americans will. I have a decent job, so I'll be fine. Things will get more expensive. Life will get a little bit harder. But I'm constantly confronted by the fact that I think what they're doing is going to cause how they responded to COVID and how they're responding to the environmental impact of humans and the Great Reset and all these things that they're trying to do. The amount of death and suffering that they're going to cause and are causing currently is going to make COVID I guess today, I was just watching Alexander, and he said today is the Orthodox Easter Sunday. So I guess prayers for Ukraine, prayers for Russia, prayers for the world. God, these people are jackasses.